All right, there's much more interesting things for lunch around the room. Let's see. He's got, what do you have? What are you draining in the bowl there?
What are you draining in the bowl?
What is that? That tuna fish you got going on over there?
I've got it.
Tuna fish doesn't usually win.
All right. Triple,
All right, well, no, that's better. That's better because you have it. Did you have the same as him?
yeah.
Okay, that's good. She's got yogurt. That's not gonna win. And what you have?
Fresh salmon salad.
Fresh salmon salad.
Wow.
That might beat your tricolor.
I think
You have an apple. That's not gonna. No, you guys have nothing. This is a nice salad here, but it's just spinach.
Oh, spinach, nuts.
Salads don't usually win, but you never know. What do we now? She's got the winner over there because she is making the matzah and cream cheese as we speak. Very nice. I think we have a Passover winner.
No ready for it, him.
All right, Ron, are we ready to go?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Only one person.
Okay.
Finished, right?
Hello, Steve. Good to see you.
Hello.
Ron, for some reason, there's no name tags on the. Can you check your Zoom settings to find out why we lost our name tags?
I see the names.
I don't see them on our main screen here.
I can see them on mine.
There they are. Okay, never mind. Now we have some Feldmans. We have a Phil Outland there, just for fun. Just for fun. Okay. Very nice. Okay, we were judging lunches earlier. Steve, do you got anything good there at home?
No,
No.
going out.
Going out afterward, okay. Bill, I assume, is in the kitchen making his lunch. So, all right, well, you know, just saying, when I used to teach lunch and learn, we used to, what do you got there, Phil? Oh, now that is a work of art. Phil wins.
What is it?
And we're all gonna be heading over to the Altland house for dinner.
It's
So
egg salad with some lox and some avocado over a bed of spinach.
once you add lox, then you're up and over. Then you're over the top. Hi, Carrie, nice to see you. Yeah, if you're, once you get lox involved, it's good. Okay, so today, friends, we're going to continue our discussion of the first theme of our 7 in our Omer practice, which is the theme of decide. Okay, just as a curious, how many of you have been trying to do the Omer counting each day and referring to the email that you were sent to try to sort of either do some kind of a meditative, I'm just going to spend 5 minutes and think about this in the shower. I don't want you to bring the computer in the shower. That's not going to work well for you. You didn't get so the temple sent an email last Thursday. Did you get the regular temple emails? So check your back on last Thursday. Every Thursday, you'll get the next week's 7 items. If you want I believe it's also on the website as well. But you can sort of spend a little bit of time each day meditating on the various different questions that there are as you count the Omer. And today we're going to talk a bit about the quality of decide and decision, which is interesting because the third of the series is about choice and choosing. So we'll talk a little bit also about what's the difference between deciding and choosing, because those would seem to be very similar concepts, and in some ways they are, in some ways they're different ideas. Okay, and then as a reminder, for those who want to do a little bit more, there will be a 20-minute Zoom check-in starting on Thursday night. That will be around the next theme, which will be about discernment. So we'll talk sort of about how those 3 themes kind of all weave in with each other. But just, did people have good Passover Seders? Yeah, if you got together with family or friends, or joined online with either Lori and me or others. We had over 200 people at the Temple Seder for our second Seder on Thursday night. So if you weren't there, you were clearly not in the in-group. But that's okay. I hope everybody had a really, really good time. And I hope that the bread of affliction is not afflicting you too badly. Okay, so we'll say our blessing and we're going to look at a text together. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, ruling spirit of the universe, who has kept us in life and sustained us. And sorry, I'm in the wrong prayer. Who has made us holy by giving us commandments to perform and commanded us to get busy with the study of Torah. Amen. I'm back in the saddle. Okay, so Karen Kadar writes the following. Would someone like to read that for us? Go ahead.
Today, I decided to turn my eye toward wonder, so that I may see expanse before me. I decided to see the possibilities of my life, so that it may open my mind to greatness. Today, we'll do one kindness, so that my heart may come more loving.
Okay, so to reiterate, today I decide to turn my eyes toward wonder so that I may see the expanse before me. Today I decide to see the possibility of my life so that I might open my mind to greatness. Today I will do one kindness so that my heart may become more loving. Someone else want to read the second part? Go ahead.
Today I will pause to consider, so that my life may become more deliberate. Help me, dear God, to step firmly upon the path of consequence, so that I may make my life a prayer of goodness and mercy, splendor and light. I ask for a life of meaning, a sense of purpose. Today I decide.
Okay. Can you think for a moment of a time when you had a hard time making a decision, not a choice, a decision to embark on something? A new project, a new way of living, a new process. A time when you were considering starting something new. Can you bring yourself to a time when you were sort of looking at trying something new? Yes.
Many years ago, we were contemplating moving to a different house,
Mm,
and I wanted to stay where I was. And I was having fights with my husband about it. And so, you know, as we were entering the phase of buying this new house that we both liked, but I still wanted to stay where I was, realizing now that would have been a big mistake, and I was much better off, you know, finally agreeing to go to the new house. But I really played hardball with the seller because I was so reluctant to move. I played hardball and I got my way
atta girl.
and I got my price. And so by then the die was cast.
Okay, so there was a big decision that you were considering. Oh, do we move or do we not move? And your husband had made a decision, we should move. And you hadn't yet made that decision.
Right.
Okay, so just following the path, the decision to move is a decision. Then there is discernment of, well, do we move to another house? Do we move to someplace bigger or smaller? Do we move to a condominium? Do we remain in Florida? Do we try the International Space Station? Right? where, you know, so there's all kinds of discernment questions about what it is we're thinking we should do, and then there's choice, right? Choice is, all right, we decided we're gonna move. We've discerned that we want to be in another house, but it should be one floor and it should be in a gated community, whatever it is that you decided. I don't know what you decided, doesn't really matter, right? But you discern what you're looking for, and then, okay, we found 3 places that meet our requirements. Which one do we want, right? So do you see that there's a progression there? The first of that progression is, are we moving? Okay, good. Another example. Yes.
When we were deciding to move from Chile to the United States.
Okay, another big move. Okay, maybe a little bigger than your move, right? Okay, good, but similar process, right? Somebody else, a different kind of a decision that didn't require a move necessarily. Doesn't have to be so epochal, right? Yeah.
I have a roommate that has been living with me for 7 years, and I've become that caretaker person. And I decided it's not in my best interest anymore.
So there was a process of, do I remain in a caretaker role with this person who has become my roommate, or do I choose a different living arrangement? Okay, good. So, yes.
Oh, I was just gonna say, what happens when you're used to making decisions with someone and then that person is no longer able to? And so then when all of a sudden you're not only responsible for whatever decisions you make as a family, but also for whatever decisions you make for yourself.
Okay, so there you go. If you're used to making collaborative decisions with a partner, for example, could be a business partner, could be a family partner, right? And now things change where you are making those decisions more independently. And that can be an overwhelming process to relearn, right? Especially if you have habit patterns and how choices and decisions get made. So when we think about these decisions, could be big decisions like, should I move? Should I change my living situation? Could be smaller decisions. I'll give you an example from me. For many, many years, I played soccer, and that was a big form of exercise. I usually played twice a week, and I would do some running in between. So I was trying to stay in shape, not nearly as much as I could, but I was addicted to soccer, and I loved it, and I kept getting hurt. The injuries were often annoying, not catastrophic. Like I didn't blow out a knee, but like I was a goalkeeper, so I would mash my hand. And I remember I had one injury where I mashed my wrist and I had to be in a splint for 7 weeks, and trying to type with the splint and everything else was a pain. Another time I had an injury, I had a rupture, or what they call a mallet rupture. There's a tendon, I don't know if you really care about this, that goes all the way from your wrist, it goes up your finger to the tip of your finger. It allows your finger to do this. Well, I took a soccer ball and the tendon ruptured, so now my poor finger is just sort of hanging there. And I was leaving for Israel 2 days later, and I had to go to a doctor, and I had to keep it flat and in a splint for a long time, and it healed beautifully, thank God, right? So I was thinking maybe, and then COVID. Okay, so the league that I was playing in evaporated because people weren't, it turned out soccer would have been a great thing to play during COVID, but who knew, right? So can't go to the gym, now what do I do? And so deciding how to exercise was this thing that was, I had to decide that I needed to exercise in a different way. Just a thing. It took me a very long time to decide that I was going to start exercising in another way. And during those first few months of COVID, I was really just sort of a lump, because I couldn't get beyond that first, okay, I will exercise. Then I needed to discern what kind of exercise can I do in the midst of a pandemic that's safe, and that I can do and that I would enjoy and that would make me feel good, and then to actually do it, right? So there can be big things, there can be little things, but when you think about these decisions, how many of you have a decision that you know you need to make, but you haven't yet, and it's still sitting there? Something you thought that you might do one day with your life, but you never did because you couldn't get beyond the point of deciding to do it. Yeah, okay, that's kind of normal. What I want to explore is sort of why that happens, right? Because as Karen Kedar writes, there's so many things that I could get if I would actually make the darn decision. I could see possibility. I could experience wonder. I could open my heart to do something more loving. I could be more deliberate, right? And my life could have more meaning if I would actually just make a decision. But there's things that hold us back from making those decisions that are a kind of personal enslavement. So I want to explore what that is. So I want us to think a little bit about these internal processes. Hang on one second, Margaret, if you would. So she writes, what is the internal process, the deep learning, the miraculous discovery, or the personal evolution that will carry us from servitude from freedom? What do I need to do inside? What do I have to learn? What do I have to discover? How do I need to evolve so I can get off my dime? So that I can begin to grow, so that I can at least make the decision to start the process of moving out of the whatever gully I find myself. And she writes, so much enslaves us. We're enslaved by our assumptions of what's possible. We're enslaved by the words we use, the constructs of our thoughts, and the speech, the way we explain what happened in the past or speak about the future. We're enslaved by our presumed limitations. We're enslaved by negativity and cynicism. We're enslaved by fear. Escape, she writes, is lifelong, complicated, thrilling. She missed one thing, which is what? Hard and terrifying. It's the substance of growth and self-actualization. We venture forth if we decide to. Though we are not alone, our journey is solitary. We think about the metaphor of the Israelites leaving Egypt. You had a mixed multitude who left Egypt, each of whom had to make an individual decision to go. Right? Just because everybody's going, and there may be a lot of peer pressure to go, doesn't mean that you don't, to some degree, individually decide we're going. Even if the alternative is death. I have a very good friend who has, thank God, found sobriety after, and has enjoyed sobriety for over 30 years. But when he was in the throes of his addiction, and he was an active drug addict, he was making decisions on a daily basis to continue to use drugs, even though he knew it was going to kill him, even though he knew it was going to destroy his marriage, even though he knew he was going to lose his job and his children. And then one day, he made a decision that he could not continue to live this way or he'd be dead. Which doesn't mean that death wasn't a possibility, because he was so frightened about what life might mean if he wasn't using. And he didn't know if he was strong enough to stop using. He couldn't imagine living without it. But he did make a decision that I can't live this way. And then eventually he did some discernment, which was, I think I'd better go to an AA meeting as opposed to an NA meeting, because he had heard from someone that the best place to store drugs was at an NA meeting. Because you'd walk out of the NA meeting and people were like, hey, do you want some? So he decided to do, even though his drug of choice was not alcohol, which doesn't mean that he didn't abuse alcohol also, he had plenty of stuff that he was doing. But he chose an AA meeting because he thought it would be safer and more anonymous. And then he picked one and he went. And now, thank God, he has 33 years of sobriety. And he's in phenomenal shape. But it all began with a decision. And that decision was wrapped up in a whole lot of stuff, right? And as she writes, here is an undeniable truth. We will not change until we want to change. And as he would talk about in his addiction, didn't matter that his wife or his ex-wife, right? She left him, wanted me to change. Didn't matter that my parents wanted me to change. Didn't matter that my boss wanted me to change. If I didn't want to change, I wasn't changing. It had to be me. And even then, freedom can be kind of overwhelming. There's so many possibilities. The wilderness is vast. The devil I knew was at least known, predictable, authoritative. What invisible force is the master of freedom? But then she also writes that freedom itself can't be willy-nilly. It can't be wild abandon. I can't just, choose freedom and then do anything I want, right? To be free is to live the religious paradoxes of choice and destiny, of independence and obligation, of memory and vision, of self-fulfillment and communal responsibility. When tethered, freedom lifts us toward holiness, wonder, aspiration, and meaning. So if I decide to go forward, I have to also realize that just because I've decided to go forward, to liberate myself from the past, doesn't mean that I'm not tethered to things as I move forward, because that itself could be dangerous. So one of the reasons why we're sometimes hard to get off the mark is because we have forgotten that we're going to die. And Psalm 90 reminds us that we're going to die. And in Psalm 90, it teaches this very famous passage, right? Yemesh notenu bahem shivim shana, ve'im b'gvura shmonim shana. The span of our years, our life is 70 years, or given strength, 80 years. But the best of them are trouble and sorrow, and they pass by speedily and we fly away. So teach us to count our days, that we may obtain a heart of wisdom. If we number our days, trying to figure out how we make each moment count, then we may find that we have a little bit of an impetus to start the journey. Because if we don't start the journey, we may find that a time comes when we can't anymore. Because we're dead. Or because we're infirm. Or because we no longer have the power that we might have at a certain stage in life. And I remember a very good friend of mine would sort of serially date really nice people. And then he would break up with them. And he was trying to figure out why he couldn't find the person to marry. And as we talked, it turned out every time he found someone that he wanted to marry, there was something wrong with that person. They weren't Mrs. Right because of this or that or the other. She's too ambitious, she's not ambitious enough. She is too attentive, she's not attentive enough. There was always something with whatever and I said, David, you're never going to get married until you figure out that you're going to die. Because the reason why marriage is called kiddushin, holy things, is because you say to somebody at some stage, You know, there are other people out there. There are other good-looking people out there. There's other people out there that I might be very compatible with, that I might love, with whom I could have great sex. But you know what? I get one shot at this life, and I pick you. And to say that to somebody, and to have them reciprocate, is about as holy a thing as you can do. To recognize your finitude, and to say, I only get to go around once, and I'm going to take that turn with you. Is there a greater thing that a person could say to somebody else? Now, it doesn't always work out that you take the whole turn with that person for all kinds of reasons, right? Sometimes you grow incompatible, right? That happens over time. Sometimes what you thought somebody was on deeper inspection is not what they appear to be. Sometimes people get sick and die much earlier than you anticipate. But when you realize that the clock is ticking, that can sometimes give you an impetus to say, I better get going. I better try. Life is too precious and short. I'm gonna get going. Now, if we sort of are kicking ourselves as we're sitting here to say, oh yeah, I can think about all those things I was supposed to do in my 20s and 30s and 40s or whatever it is that I didn't do, and we're feeling guilt-laden about. Anybody carrying some of that? The rest of you are lying. When did Abraham start his journey to the land of Canaan? Well, he started in his 20s with his father, and he got waylaid in Haran in northern Mesopotamia, and he didn't start until when? He was 75. Anybody know when Moses headed back to Egypt after shepherding for about 50 years? He was 75. Life begins, friends, at 75. Just ask Abraham and Moses. If you're a little nervous about that, Sarah was 9 years his junior, all right? She was 66. Okay, she started getting Social Security and she headed off to the land of Canaan. So it doesn't matter at what age you find yourself. A decision to change is a decision to change, and worthwhile. As Rabbi Tarfon said, the day is short, the work is plentiful, the laborers are indolent, the reward is great, and the master of the house is pressing or insistent. Dochek. Dochek is knocking. So when we think about another reason, right, that we need to sort of make decision is because time itself is very holy and precious. Rabbi Eamon Joshua Heschel taught that Judaism is a religion of time aiming at the sanctification of time. There are no 2 hours alike. Every hour is unique, exclusive, and endlessly precious. These things are amazing. Anybody have one of these? I was at a conference a week ago where a guy who wrote a phenomenal book named Rabbi Danny Schiff wrote a book called Judaism in the Digital Age. I've been talking a little bit about this. It's talking about how really in 1990, we sort of had a big shift in our world. Those of us who have lived through that shift may not perceive it to the degree that people looking in from the outside are perceiving it. But his contention is that the modern world, which began in the late 18th century, ended in 1990. And that we now live in a new age that he's calling the digital age. These things are wondrous, right? I can call anyone in the world and it sounds like they're next door. I can keep track of my life. I can find out any fact I want to know. I can figure out the score of any game that I want to try to follow. I can keep up with all of my friends, people who I don't even get to talk to very regularly because they pop up on my Facebook feed. I can give out a message that I want to share with a lot of people. If the algorithm points it up their Facebook, whatever, there's lots of million cool things. How many of you have ever sort of tucked away a few hours and you have no idea what happened because you were putting little pieces of fruit in groups of 3. Or you were playing solitaire. Or you were playing Yahtzee, that's my guilty pleasure. Right? Or trying to figure out which pin should you pull for the puzzle, right? Or you're trying to figure out how to get 1 through 9 in the right box of a Sudoku puzzle or whatever it is that you do. And you look up and you're like, oh my God, 2 hours just went by.
Guilty.
It's not like that didn't happen before, right? But it's easier now with digital technology to numb the mind. With 300 channels on cable television or 1,000 channels on cable television and whatever else you subscribe to, and 100 or 300 movies at your beck and call with whatever else you subscribe to, plus great other television and everything else, you can pretty much stimulate your mind with candy for all of your waking hours until it's time to go to sleep. And not necessarily use that time for any meaningful or sacred purpose, like to learn something, or to have a conversation with someone, or to go do something of service to someone else, or to open your eyes to what's outside the window on the other side of that screen, and to note the natural beauty, or to take a little drive and go peer at the herons in the Everglades, or the manatees up by the power plant in West Palm Beach, or to just, thank God we live in South Florida, to go just stare at the ocean and watch the gulls try to find something to eat, right? He says no 2 hours are alike. Those of you who are squandering this hour right now with me, can't get it back.
That's one.
She kisses up so well. I appreciate it. Right? Every hour is unique, exclusive, and endlessly precious. So part of the reason why you need to make a decision is that so you use your hours well. And the last week, each of us had 168 individual precious hours of life. A third of them hopefully were spent sleeping. Because if you don't sleep, your mind needs to cleanse itself of all of those proteins that form in your synapses. And when you sleep, did you know your brain secretes a juice that dissolves those? That's why when you don't get enough sleep, your mind is cloudy, because those proteins form in the synapses and your brain doesn't function as well. So when you sleep, you actually get a brain bath. It's kind of cool to think about. So most of the time when we procrastinate, it's because of 3 or 4 things. One might be fear of failure. Another might be fear of success. And a third might be fear of the unknown. And then mixed with all of this is what we often call analysis paralysis. So when we have analysis paralysis, we often find ourselves confronting other things, like, and when we get to discernment and choice, you'll get into this a little bit. But one time I made a decision that I would, this is years before when I was still playing soccer, that I thought I wanted to join a gym. I made a decision I would join a gym. However, I couldn't decide which gym to join. But that gym is expensive, but and there's a lot of people I know that go there, so I probably wouldn't work out anything but my mouth if I went there, right? That gym's got a lot of meatheads, and I don't know what to do in that place. I'm a little overwhelmed by that, you know. And it took a while to like just go over like what was moron, just join a gym, right? I remember it was New Year's Day, it was about 5 years ago. I walked in January 2nd. And I said, how much money can I give you today? Because I knew if I plunked down a lot of money on membership and training, you know, sessions, then I would actually start using that gym, and it worked out. No pun intended on the word. Okay. Right? So when we talk about procrastination and fear, what is it about a fear of failure that keeps us from making decisions?
A weak ego.
A weak ego. So what does that mean?
Well, you're more interested in what other people may think about you when you fail than to realize that when you fail, you are always learning something.
Okay, so maybe there's a fear of what are those people gonna say about me if I fall on my face? Or this thing doesn't work out the way I thought it. Okay, good. Good. What else? Explain a little bit of what is the contours of fear of failure.
Looking stupid.
Looking stupid, right? So what will people say about me if they see me vulnerable or broken or fallible? Yeah,
Fear of disappointing yourself.
fear of disappointing yourself. Say more about that.
Well, if you embark on something, I tried to embark on some painting that I had been putting off for a long time. Never came out as good as I wanted to, so I actually have stopped doing it instead of trying to continue. I just was too disappointed in what I was able to do.
Ever see that movie Sideways?
Yes.
Right? What if I wrote the novel and no one wanted to read it? Right? Margaret, you were gonna say something?
Well, I think what it is judgment. Some fear of judgment of other people's of us.
Mm-hmm.
Years, and I think that's what all this is about, that you don't do something, you know.
Right, so it may be that we're afraid of the judgments that other people might render on us that would cause us shame or embarrassment. And so we have a hard time getting going because what if it doesn't work? What if I try to stop using drugs and I can't? What if I try to write that book and no one wants to read it? What if I start that business and I plunk all my money into that new entrepreneurial endeavor and it fails? Right? Yeah.
That a lot of this has to do with coming to a place in yourself where you're comfortable with yourself. And then you're not afraid to make that decision.
Mm-hmm. So there needs to be this thing, right? Not fear, but faith.
Yeah.
What is faith? We talked about this a little bit last time.
It's a positive thing, you know, I mentioned myself. I mean, I just had, this whole thing is really good. Because I just went through the last couple of weeks where I decided to leave a place that I was working at for over 20 years and to embark on another venture. And I mean, I was so stressed out for so long. But once I made that decision, I just did it. And I'm happy now. But it's frightening. I mean, because after all, I'm of an age, it's, you know, you have to prove yourself when you do something that, and it's scary, but I've somehow gotten over it. And I just, whatever happens, happens.
Excellent, right? So you have to have faith, right?
And confidence.
And confidence, right? Faith is a belief in the unknown and the unseen.
But where does apathy and laziness come into this?
Well, that's a different piece, right? I'm not gonna make a decision if I don't care, right? If I'm never gonna leave Egypt if I'm happy there. Or if I'm too lazy to go, right? It's like that great television commercial where the guy goes, well, I would run a marathon, but it is quite a long way. So if I would rather be lazy or apathetic, well, then I'm making a decision by not making a decision, right? I've decided that is just not worth, right, my effort.
It's not fear, it's just.
I haven't even gotten to that decision, right? So fear of failure could be like, I don't want to try, I don't want to start because what if it doesn't go well? What if I move to the United States and I'm miserable and lonely? Right? What if I move to a new place and it's a lemon? Or I'm not happy? There's all kinds of things that can emerge from that, right? What is a fear of success?
Now we can change. I'm not sure what that is.
Sometimes it puts you in a spotlight and you don't really want to be there.
Yeah. What if I ran for office and I won? Then I'd have to serve in that office. Then I'd have to change my whole life in order to accommodate that new thing that I actually, embarked on.
What would my life look like if I did that?
And what would my life look like if I did that, if I succeeded? I went for that promotion and I got it. Now, what are all my coworkers going to say about me because they didn't get it? Are they going to say I'm ambitious? Are they going to say, oh, she's power hungry? Are they going to say he's conceited? Right? Am I going to lose my friendships because they're jealous of my success? So sometimes people have a fear of, oh my God, what if I get it? I'm not even going to apply for that new job because if I got it, I'm so afraid of what that would mean, the disruptors to my life, that I don't want to deal with those consequences. Yeah.
I think also success means rising to a new standard and maintaining it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What if I can't sustain it?
Yeah.
Good. A lot of times I think people are just afraid of what they don't know. If it's just different, it's a change. Some people just don't do change. There are some people who are just constitutionally more wired to like change, and some people who are just constitutionally wired to not like change. So my youngest daughter does not like change. And when we renovated the temple, she said, I hate it. And you hate it? She goes, I liked it better the other way. I liked it better. She didn't like it better. It was just different, right? We did some renovations to the house. I liked it better the old way. I liked it better before. Then she comes on now, she says, I like the old couch. The old couch had a hole in it. The old couch had no cushion anymore for your tush. It was like a bowl. You'd sit down and you'd sink. I was comfortable. I liked it, right? So sometimes we don't want to change or we don't want to make decisions because I'm good where I'm at. And even if I'm not good where I'm at, I know that and I would prefer to stay in the known than to venture off into the unknown.
Comfort. Better than.
Right. When in history have you heard people having these kinds of conversations?
Revolutionary War.
Yeah. All the colonists that were trying to decide whether they were going to commit group treason against the greatest empire in the world. What if we lose? And that was certainly a far more likely outcome for the colonists than that they would beat, oh, I don't know, the British Army. And if you read the history of the Revolutionary War, the fact that they won was incredible and required amazing sacrifice. Not just in lives lost, but in treasure lost and people's livelihoods erased and wounds that were egregious. But on the other hand, had they not done that, look what America did for the world. We can also look at what America did that was horrible, right? We engaged in commerce with millions of people as chattel. And at the same time, we also gave the world a vision of what would it look like of a country that was governed of the people, by the people, for the people, that actually took modernity for a test drive, that envisioned a society where you could practice any religion you wanted. Imagine what the Jewish future would have looked like had there never been a United States. Had those people had said, you know what, we're just going to stay with the British. So much of what Judaism evolved to be in the United States. First of all, the reason why the United States became the second largest home to the Jewish people that exists on the planet today, at one time was the much largest home to the Jewish people, it was because of all these amazing freedoms that were afforded here. So those kinds of fears of change can be big ones like, do we revolt? And can be little ones. Do I stay in this failed marriage? Do I continue to allow my mother to torment me? Do I stay in a job that isn't fulfilling? Do I stay in a house that isn't the right house for me? Or in a country that's not the right country for me? Or whatever that might be. So sometimes these fears that we have are not like little things. Rabbi Kadar writes, something happened on the playground in 3rd grade or somewhere along our journey. Something happened and our souls were dented. Once a soul is dented, it's dented forever. You heal, but not from it. You learn to live with the dent. You find a place to put it away so you can go about your life and even be happy. But then something happens and you're triggered. So can you think a little bit about one of the dents that you carry in your soul?
The only thing I can think of is that I'm not good enough.
That question of, am I good enough? Right? Was there a time in your life where someone told you you weren't good enough?
That's interesting. When I was 9, right now I can't think of his name, but a rabbi told me I was a brat. And I wasn't. And I don't know that it really dented me, but the fact that I could still bring it up, that when I'm a rabbi of people, apparently has had
That's
some
a dent.
consequences,
That's a dent.
I guess.
Sure.
I don't believe it. But I still remember it, and it still hurts. Yeah. But I forgot his name.
Mhm.
Finally.
I feel like for me has been a dent moving to a country that a lot of people think you're different. So it's like you belong, but you don't belong. So it's a dent.
Yeah, when someone says you don't belong,
Yeah, it's like,
you're not one of us.
that's, they keep on saying, you know, you're not one of us. And you taught me to say, well, I have the American passport like you do. So, but it's very denting because of your accent. You're always like embarrassed when people, I told you a couple of weeks ago here. So it's very, very denting. It's taking a lot of effort to say, look, I am what I am. And yes, I'm an immigrant, but I'm a US citizen also.
Mhm.
It's like, it is, it's all about judgment. We look at people with the words that people say. We said it, we shouldn't say. It's hurtful. It's hard to let go.
Yeah, and some of these things you don't think about. So, you know, when I think about a dent, when I was a kid, I was the smallest kid in the class. Wasn't my fault that I was the smallest kid in the class. I blame my 5'2" Zadie for not getting bigger, and for whatever reason, my 6'4" tall father and my 5'1" mother, the 5'1" mother won in my case than the 6' tall father. And so I was always the smallest kid in the class, which meant that when we would go get picking teams at the playground, I was usually picked last. Or sometimes not picked at all.
We would pick you first.
And,
Raise your hand.
right? So I will tell you, I don't think I realized it so much at the time, but I've been chasing getting picked for a long time. And that need to get picked is something that kind of, and I wasn't really aware of it so much, right? But I just always had this need. I think it's what kind of made me the class clown. Because if I could get people to laugh at me, I guess then they liked me. Because I associated getting picked for whatever game we were playing on the playground with being liked. Because all the kids that got picked, they seemed to be liked a lot.
So you wanted to be a chosen person.
So, that sense of wanting to be accepted, I wanted to be included. Yeah, I wanted to be a part of the chosen people. Right? And so as I think about that, right? There were times in my life where if I thought I wasn't going to get picked, I shied away from that. Or if I thought that I wasn't going to be liked, I might not have gone for that opportunity. Or when I did, and it didn't work out the way I wanted, it was another dent. Right? So each of us is walking around with these things, most of which happened when we were in 3rd grade on the playground. Now, you might need to spend some time with your therapist unpacking what that is, right? I was able to figure it out more or less on my own, but we all kind of walk around with that. And so then the question that Karen asks is, does that dent enslave you? Does it sort of keep you locked into sort of who you are? And Judaism suggests that part of what we need to do is to follow a path for liberation. So Phil writes, I was terrible at sports, and when they picked teams, I'm sorry, we lost you there for a second. Hang on. We'll pull that up here for a second, Phil. I was terrible at sports, and when they picked teams, the one would say, we don't want him more than you don't want. That's rough. Right? And those things dent. And so, yes, go ahead, and then I'll move.
The dance.
Some people do,
Yes.
right?
I was as a teenager, I was 30 pounds more than I am now. But in maturity, I've become the person who, well, Martha and Margaret know, I teach water aerobics to a bunch of us twice a week. I've become a person who nurtures other people into health and wellness activities.
Which is a beautiful response, right? But not everybody can do that. And even when people do move beyond all those things, doesn't mean that you're not still carrying the dent with you, right? Of all the people that said nasty things because you were a bigger person.
And you get better. Not easy when you start doing public speaking.
And so when we think about what the Jewish calendar invites us to do, there's actually a progression of not one holiday, but 3, which really starts with Purim. What does Purim celebrate? Purim celebrates our sheer survival. Just the fact that we're alive, thank God, right? Because Haman would have liked that not to be. So Purim, we celebrate in this very, very physical way because we're celebrating our very physical survival and nothing really beyond that. Purim doesn't say, oh, thank God we survived so we could fulfill the terms of the Torah. It doesn't say, oh, we survived so we could offer sacrifices. No, Purim celebrates the fact that we're just alive. And that's it. But then Passover comes along and says it's not enough to just be alive. You have to be free. Because even if you're alive without freedom, isn't enough of a life. You need more of a life than that. But it's not enough to just be free. So we have these 49 days that lead us to Shavuot, because it says it's not just to be free and to be alive, it's to have purpose, duty, obligation. Life needs a mission, a structure that shapes life into meaning. And so if we get to the point of thank God we're alive, and we're blessed with enough freedom to be able to have some measure of agency, whatever that is, right? Then we can decide what's going to be my purpose. What duties will I embrace? What obligations will I shoulder? What will be my life's mission? And how will I build or embrace structures that will give meaning for my existence? Yeah.
I think it takes a lot of insight and maturity to go through that progression and to hopefully achieve self-actualization.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people don't want to go through that in terms of looking at themselves, but that takes a lot of courage.
It does.
Or they don't have the facility to even understand it. So, I mean, that's like a mighty progression.
We can hop on board a boat and sail across the water and be perfectly satisfied by living and seeing the surface. And we have no idea that there's an entire world just underneath us, but you can't see it unless you're willing to dive in. And you can go your whole life without ever experiencing that world. You have to make a decision that you want to have a deeper meaning to your existence. You're absolutely right, Maddie. And not a lot, most people don't live with awareness. Most people don't live with a sense of conscious deliverance, right? Most people kind of do this.
But I think it takes so much courage to upset the status quo and to risk, and that's a big word, risk, to do that. I think it's just monumental when, someone tries, and that's an accomplishment in itself.
So I agree. And we'll have a whole week where we focus on courage as one of our themes. With the few minutes we have left, I want to talk about an idea that talks about the idea that there is nothing in the universe that's fixed. Everything is constantly in motion. Everything is constantly unfolding, evolving, growing. What sort of the scholars of this new idea called process theology say that things are in process. The most fundamental claim of process philosophy is that every aspect of our reality is in some way in process. Is this table moving or not?
Yes,
Quantum theory, right?
Right? On the one hand, it doesn't seem to be going very far. On the other hand, at a molecular level, it's busy. I can't see those molecules without a little help, but if I could get into the molecules of this plastic and this rubber and this wood, I would see this table's got a lot going on. And have you moved? You're all still sitting where you sat down almost an hour ago, right? But we have moved through space at a fairly steep clip. The planet has 1/24 further along in its rotation than when we started. Everything in the universe is in process. And if a thing is something that exists over time without changing, the world is composed not of things like tables and chairs and people. It's composed of events and processes. And in this understanding, every level of reality, from the molecule to the human being, is a succession of droplets of experience. It's not the substance, not bones and skin and muscle. It's what happened. Droplets of experience. Those experiences can be sublime. Saturday night, we went to go see a show, the Patsy Cline show at the Lauderhill Playhouse. Ali Rosenblum, who grew up at Temple Bethel, is starring as Patsy Cline. She's magnificent. It's a phenomenal show. They're still going this week if you want to get tickets. That was a great experience for an hour, right? The ride home, where we talked about watching Ali Rosenblum grow for the last 7 years, was also an experience. And then when we got home and brushed our teeth, was also an experience. And walking the dog is also an experience. Sleep is also an experience, right? Everything that happens is an experience. And which in every moment incorporates aspects of the past while also making way for the new. And so Tova Spitzer, who's a scholar of what's called process theology, supposes not just that everything in the world is in motion and evolving. What does that mean? God too is in process. That God is evolving and changing how we think and talk about God says something about how we experience the world. If we continue to exalt something that is eternal, unchanging, and exerts ultimate control, how can we accept the reality that life is a constant process of growth, change, and decay, and that ultimate control is an illusion? If God itself is in process, is constantly evolving and changing, how godly then to embrace change and the ever-changing nature of our own existence. If chance and contingency are aspects of the godly universe, then we can bless the uncertainties in our own lives. Of course your life changed. It's supposed to. Nothing is supposed to remain fixed. Nothing can. So the fact that your knee hurts and it never used to hurt, duh. The fact that you are filled with much more wisdom than you were 5 years ago, of course. Droplets of experience have filled your cup. If chance and contingency are aspects of a godly universe, then we can bless the uncertainties in our own lives rather than bemoaning them. If coercive power is no longer perceived as godly, oh my God, I can't do that because God's going to get mad at me. What if we thought about God as saying, I wonder what you would be like if you did that. I wonder what we would be like together. Maybe we would have a better relationship. Maybe we would understand each other better if you would change. After all, I'm changing. If coercive power is no longer perceived as godly, we can create a powerful theological critique of ideologies that exalt such power in the human realm. Whether we speak of human power over the natural world or the ways in which humans exert power over one another. The fact is, and we'll conclude, that part of the reason why we need to decide is because whether we like it or not, the world is going to keep on moving and changing. And we can choose to be active agents in that evolution or passive experiences of it. But either way, it's ours to decide. Have a wonderful day. Take care, Vera and Phil. Glad you were with us today.